On today's episode of the Hornady Podcast, Preston and I are joined by Kristy Titus from Pursue the Wild. We start the podcast talking about where she grew up and how she got into the outdoor sports. We talk about her Pursue the Wild brand, along with some shooting competitions that help her become a better hunter. We finish up talking about reloading. She's a new reloader. She came here to the factory to get some expert instruction. We talk about some key tips and tricks for the novice reloader. She came here to learn a lot. We learned a lot from her, and we hope you do too.
I'm Joyce Hornady. You might say accuracy is my business. I make bullets.
You are listening to the Hornady Podcast.
Thanks for joining us, and enjoy the show.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Hornady Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Seth Swerzik, joined today to my left, Preston Lentford, fellow marketeer.
Hi,
Preston.
folks. How you doing today?
I hope everybody's doing well. We are joined in the studio by none other than Kristy Titus, hunter, conservationist, shooter, competitive shooter, a force in the industry. Kristy, thanks for taking time to sit down with us.
Oh my gosh, it's been great being here for the second time, and every time I come here, I'm always welcomed with incredible hospitality. So I really appreciate how wonderful and gracious you guys are with your time, and wow, you're growing so fast. It's unbelievable. You know, all of this demand on ammunition really has you guys cranking out buildings.
Yeah.
It's unreal.
It's been fun to see, not just from the last 3 to 5 years, but the last 5 to 10 years.
Yeah. How
dramatically, we've increased not just our production volume, but also our quality. I think that's something I've really been impressed with is, I'm a user. I'm a consumer. I shoot, I hunt, shoot competitively, used to shoot a bunch, and now I shoot quite a bit, just not as much. And what I've really been impressed with is we've done a lot of things to increase our production quantity and shipping volume, but at the same time, we found processes that could be better controlled to keep, and in a lot of instances, increase the quality despite the increase of production. So that's been neat. Normally, it's a dichotomy. Normally, production's up, quality's going to have to suffer a little bit, but yeah, we've really found some ways around it.
Yeah, that's right, and it's been a blast. You do mention expansion, and yeah, we are growing. Obviously, right now the demand is as high as it's ever been. You would say almost a buyer's surplus, a surplus of buying. Not necessarily everybody in the market is making as much ammo as they ever have before. Record numbers, but people still need ammo. I'd call it a buying surplus.
Yeah, it's not so much an ammo shortage as it is a buying surplus because, as a country, we've never made more ammo than we do right now.
Yeah, you guys are running around the clock. You have 2 buildings now, working on a 3rd.
Yeah.
It's very impressive. And what is also really impressive is the support that you're lending to your community. And I think that goes a long ways for the tradition of Hornady and what you guys have done in the Grand Island, Nebraska area. Really is, you're supporting a community, you're supporting the culture, and that's really important right now.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Especially in rural areas. I mean, this is an ag town, ag
100%.
area.
That's
and
it.
You guys give another resource for employment and people to have opportunities that they might not otherwise have.
Yeah, the Hornadys have always been great to their employees and to the city.
Yep, awesome. Well, Kristy, before you had a TV show and all the big social media stuff, you were growing up somewhere. So where were you born? What got you into the outdoor sports type of lifestyle?
Oh, I've been in the outdoors my whole life. I was raised, my parents had mules, and my dad would always, pack into the backcountry. Him and his buddies would go hunting, and I grew up on the back of a mule, never went to Disneyland. We were always just camping, fishing, in the outdoors. And really the only thing I wanted to do when I was little is ride a mule and go camping. I mean, I loved it. And my dad started taking me hunting when I was little. And it was interesting because my sister and I were raised identical, obviously in the same household. She would want to stay behind with my grandparents. And I was like, don't you dare leave me. I am going camping and I'm going in the woods. And I've always loved shooting and just went from there. Really, I in my early 20s, I started working with conservation groups. Safari Club International predominantly is where I kind of started stuffing envelopes. And really what spearheaded me getting involved with conservation is I had a lot of things I wanted to learn that I didn't already know. And so as a volunteer for SCI, I started organizing like outreach, so map and compass classes, survival classes, GPS classes, and pistol classes. And I would organize all these events where I thought, if I want to learn something other people do, and it just kind of grew from there. I ended up working with the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation for a long time, co-hosted their television show. But I got obsessed with elk hunting in my 20s. When I was 13, my dad took me on my first elk hunt, but it just kind of, in my 20s, hunting just kind of overtook my entire life. And I had a friend who told me one day, he's like, "Hey, Christy, you're great at this horse packing and, this mule thing, but you really suck at backpacking and you also suck at shooting." And I was like, "Well, thanks." So I reached out, and I was really supported by Magpul. They were awesome. I had some great instructors there, and I trained with them for a number of years, and that really taught me a lot about not only just being a hunter, but, taking a different level of ethics into the field with me and a different set of confidence skills. And so I ended up just doing that, and it's kind of snowballed. I could go in for an hour about it, but that's basically, kind of the nuts and bolts of, my heart and roots are with conservation for sure.
Always important. And you say you're growing up backpacking, mule packing
Yeah.
into the backcountry. What state are you hunting in, and where were you raised?
So I was raised in Oregon, and my husband and I and my parents are just now relocating to Wyoming. So we have some more opportunities to be in more wild places more often. So Oregon used to be a lot less population dense, and it's gotten a little busy there, and it feels like the mountain ranges have gotten smaller. So we're moving on to we like the size of Wyoming with, less than 500,000 people.
Yeah. That
Yeah.
is awesome.
So we're pretty stoked I'm hoping to stretch the legs on our animals more this fall and make them pack some elk out of some rough spots is the goal.
Heck
So
yeah.
we'll see.
Sounds like a pretty good goal. So that's cool that it was really rooted in conservation.
Yeah.
Because that's something that is, so wildly important with, like you mentioned, Oregon becoming so much more populated, in all these states where people are kind of evacuating from other urban areas and putting more people where there was once less people.
Mm-hmm.
Conservation is going to become increasingly more important. So just trying to get that message out there and get that habitat preserved. Such a critical point and purpose as a hunter that we need to be giving back. And that's awesome that's where it all started for you.
Well, coming from the ammunition standpoint, you guys are part of those Pittman-Robertson dollars and that PR Act. And whether you hunt or you're into shooting sports, you every time you buy a firearm or ammo, you're fueling the conservation across the country.
I don't think a lot of people necessarily know that
No.
either. So every time you buy a box of ammunition, dollars of that are going to conservation,
That's right.
whether you know it or not. Which is absolutely fantastic.
Yep, got to take care of it. So you're doing some training with Magpul, and that's one thing that when you look at people in the industry on the TV show side and the influencer side and the social media, sometimes they have a really big presence and they do good things, but they don't necessarily really understand the nuts and bolts and the why of a rifle, or how to shoot, or how to mount a scope on a rifle, and how to independently take care of all their stuff. And that's one thing that's really great with you is you give you a rifle, a scope, a set of rings, and a box of ammo, and you can assemble a rifle, put it together, shoot it, get it verified out at range, and then take it hunting.
Yeah.
And that type of comprehension is so important when you're maybe taking a non-traditional distance type shot.
Well, one of your pro staffers is who taught me, Kaylin Wojcik, is who taught me almost everything that I initially learned about precision shooting. Because Dwayne Liptak from Magpul, I contacted him and was like, "Hey, I'm doing this video blog and I really need to learn how to shoot." And I showed up to shoot a class with Kaylin. This is so bad. I brought a 300 Win mag.
Yeah.
Because I really thought I needed, and it was a hunting rifle. So imagine I dumped 100 rounds out of a 300 Win mag hunting rifle one day.
Oof.
And in Yakima, Washington in the summer, it was like 110 degrees. And I remember I was driving back to my hotel and muzzle brake, the concussion from my muzzle brake and the heat and just the recoil, I thought I was going to die. Like it thumped me.
Yeah.
And a big learning curve. I mean, that first class I did with them was such a gear shakedown. I mean, you don't know what you don't know. And I'm still learning. Like I will forever be a student. I mean, I'm here learning this week. We'll talk about that later. I'm going to shoot my first 3-gun match tomorrow. Actually, 2 guns when I'm going to shoot. But again, I've never done it before. So I think you, as a student of the gun, or when you're interested in hunting and shooting sports, you never stop learning. You always have that hunger for that next step. And like we've been talking about the basics of things, but then as you learn those basics, then you start rabbit holing information, and the simple things seem like on the surface. As you start to deep down, you realize how deep those roots go, and it gets crazy. But I spent 5 years going out to Magpul up to Yakima 2 or 3 times a year and just learning. And I do now compete in like NRL Hunter or some PRS matches. I'm not what I would say like, supreme competitive shooter, but it makes me better at what I do. And so every time I go to a match, whether I've practiced or not for it, I step out there and I do my best, and it makes me a better hunter in the fall. And so if for nothing more, it's just to keep me to a certain level, and then also to challenge my skill set, which I think is really important, that we don't get complacent.
Yep. Well, and for the listeners out there not familiar with Kalen Wojcik, he knows a thing or two about a thing or two in regard to shooting. So Kalen Wojcik and Phil Vallejo, modern-day sniper and modern-day rifleman, check them out. Happy to support those guys. They teach a lot of great stuff. But I think what you mentioned now towards the end of that was competing and how that increases your proficiency as a hunter.
Yeah.
That's something that we've been talking about for years. Is if nothing else, if us doing competitive shooting has done nothing else, it has made me more proficient in the field. And the NRL
100%.
Hunter has to be. I mean, that's the purpose, really. I mean, and that's
the
been
NRL
fantastic.
Hunter is so much harder than PRS. Like, I'm so glad I started shooting PRS and didn't just jump headfirst into NRL Hunter, because in my opinion, it's a much harder competition, because it's a competition truly of one.
It really is.
Yeah, it's so much harder than PRS, where you walk up to a stage, you know the targets, you know the ranges, you can watch all your buddies on your squad, see how they build their shooting positions, see how they manage their gear, watch their match flow, and then you can replicate that or not in some cases. When you walk into a stage at NRL Hunter, you go in completely blind. You don't know where targets are, you don't have distances, you have to build your own shooting position. It's really a match of one. Like, you have no help. It's extremely challenging.
Yeah.
But it's just like a hunt.
And you've yet to do one yet.
I've yet to do one. I've done
3
similar.
I enjoy the crap out of
Oh,
it.
they're super
almost more than PRS. I almost think it's easier. The ranges are less than a typical PRS match. I will say that. It is a race against the clock, that's for sure. But initially, the very first match, I had a lot of trouble finding targets.
Yeah.
At that point on, you kind of know what to expect almost a little bit, and I found them a lot easier. I just enjoy the crap out of it.
Yeah.
Because there are some times you'll get to a PRS match or an old NRL race gun match, and everybody comes off the line, what was your win? What do you hold?
Yes,
And it's
exactly.
like,
Well, and it's a
come
trigger
on.
pulling contest.
Yeah.
Where the NRL Hunter or some of the field style matches, like the endurance type matches that I've done, where it's not just trigger pulling, it's target ranging, target identification, managing your dope. Like, some people aren't very good at, I found the target, I know the range of the target. Well, now I have to retrieve the data from whatever means I'm using and then put that on the gun. And a lot of wheels can fall off in that time frame. And then building the position and deploying the tripod on the clock and stuff like that really makes for a direct training environment for you hunting in the field.
I was really fortunate. One of your other ambassadors, Jake Vibert, he has helped me kind of at this second level of prep. Like, I learned a lot of the basics from Kalen, and then I started shooting matches, and Jake has been awesome, letting me squad with him to where I can actually watch. I really think if you're learning, it's good to watch people that are good at what they do, because if you watch somebody that's fumbling around, you're almost training yourself what not to do. So like, there's a lot of people that I really look up to, and Jake's one of those guys. I want to watch him shoot. And like, I was at the Quiet Riot match one time, and I was watching Jake shoot so attentively when I set up my gun left-handed. Like I was trying to, he's left-handed, and I was so intent on how Jake ran that stage, and I was really trying to be a good student. That I'm like, what the heck? Realize in the middle of like setting up my tripod, like, you dummy, he's left-handed. You are not mirroring him. Like this is not good.
Yeah, he is an impressive specimen to watch though. The second time I watched him, he won a large NRL match, or I don't remember if it was PRS, by like 20.
Yeah.
And there were some good shooters there. He was in his groove, that's for sure. But enjoyable to watch.
Yeah, I will say in that vein of shooting left-handed, this would have been 2015-16 time frame. Preston and I were shooting a bunch. There was a lot of stages you'd go to match where you were forced to shoot support hand, support eye, and I, as it turns out, got pretty good at that. And so just, you might want to practice that, honestly, because I found myself now going to a match and deliberately going support side when I don't have to because of the barricade or whatever. Just again, it makes you gives you more tools in your toolbox.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask, so you go to your first class with Kaylin up at Magpul with a 300 Win mag.
Mm-hmm.
Fast forward now on the...
Well, and mind you, luckily the next day he let me borrow, he had a loaner 308, and he let me borrow it, and he's like...
a good trainer should.
He's like, we want you to survive this weekend, so here you go.
So I
saved my life.
I want to know what you're shooting, what you've... I mean, that was years ago. So now that you've had some more time in the industry and more time in the field, what's your match rifle look like, cartridge and setup-wise, and then what's your go-to hunting rifle and cartridge? What do those setups look like?
So when I originally bought my first precision rifle, it was chambered in 6.5 Creedmoor, and that was coming from Kaylin. I mean, Kaylin's like, get 6.5. 6.5 works great, and it's a great round. It does have slightly more recoil characteristics than a 6mm Creedmoor. So I've made the switch now to 6mm Creedmoor, and I'm shooting the Ruger Precision rifles. I do, even with that being said, I've put a little bit of weight on the fore end of my rifle. For me, the downfall is being small. So I don't manage recoil as well as you're going to manage recoil because, you've got...
He's an oak.
You've got a lot of size on me. So, when you watch a lot of these guys run their guns, they're shooting and their body position doesn't move. And for me, weight is literally my best friend. So I'm really learning to weight down my rifle. So, and I'm just buying match ammo from you guys, like 108s and running them, and they're great. And I'm not good enough as a shooter to where I have to worry about reloading, because my firearm optic, I'm running the Night Force 7-35 and the ATAC-R with a Mil-C reticle. I'm not good enough as a shooter to where my firearm optic ammunition combo aren't adequate. I haven't reached that threshold. Now, I think there's a lot of shooters that come to a threshold where they really need to extract that extra hit at every match so they can get that title. I mean, if you watch some of these top tier shooters, they're literally winning an entire season by a round, like an impact or two. I mean, it's not significant. Wild. It's not like they're beating each other like, oh, I have 10 extra hits than you, which is nothing. That's a stage. It's sometimes one impact. And so these guys are trying to get standard deviations of 3 feet a second out of their reloaded ammo, where I'm fine with getting a standard deviation of 7 to 15 feet a second out of my factory ammo, which is perfectly adequate for my level of marksmanship. Because really, the biggest problem with a gun is the guy behind it or gal.
It's the nut behind the bolt all the time.
It is always. So, I mean, for example, I was out last week showing a guy, he was going to buy a gun for his wife. I let him try my 6.5 PRC. And I was like, just try my 6.5 PRC. She's going to love this. And so he's on a prairie dog at 360 yards. And he's like missing left. And he's like, I don't know why I'm missing left. And I'm like, do me a favor. I'm like, just bump your level on your rifle. It's just a little bit off. So he bumps it over and he levels up the rifle, and next thing you know, he hits a prairie dog. It's just little things like that most of the time, it's not the system, it's how you work the system.
Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, the top tier shooters could win with my stuff. I can't. but they could.
Yeah.
Yeah, the best shooters are the best shooters. You'll never cartridge or reload yourself into the win. It's the one who practices and applies the fundamentals of marksmanship.
Yeah.
The most consistent on every time that they're at a match, every time. Yeah. So what's your hunting rifle look like?
So I have been in love with the Ruger American 6.5 Creedmoor, and that's been kind of my go-to. But since the 6.5 PRC, I really have a hard time divorcing myself from that. So I've got the Ruger Hawkeye Long Range Hunter, and I've got that chambered in 6.5 PRC, and I have a really hard time walking away from it right now. Like it's great for deer, it's great for elk, it's great at like any normal hunting range, and it's outstanding characteristics to shoot. It's 60% less recoil than a 300 Win mag. Throw a suppressor on it.
Yeah.
It's pretty awesome. I mean, it's really tough to beat.
You had us at 6.5 PRC, but you threw the suppressor on there.
Yeah, that's
and
the
we
win-win.
both just,
Yeah, you get the low recoil, you get the flat trajectory, you get plenty of velocity on target to make that bullet work on, elk on down. Nothing wrong with the 6.5 PRC. In fact, it's a go-to for so many people now. We've really seen, that match blow up, or that round blow up when we released it. Plenty of match application, to beat the wind. We used to joke that it was the wind cheater, and we send people to shoot first in that squad that's shooting the PRC to go cheat the wind a little bit. But as it shakes out now over the last few years, the 6.5 PRC really is a hunting cartridge.
Yeah.
And we shoot a lot of matches with it. It's great for that. But the most demand is for our hunting ammunition. I mean, it is a hunting cartridge, and you can take most things with confidence with it. You get anything bigger than an elk or some elk at range, and you might want a little more bullet diameter or horsepower. But for the most part, for the bulk of the hunting that goes on in this country, 6.5 PRC is low recoil. It's fast. It's flat.
It's fun to shoot.
Yeah, external characteristics are phenomenal. I mean, it doesn't drift in the wind too bad. It's just all in all the wind, and then you throw a suppressor on there. Icing on the cake. It's
a dream. So yeah, I mean, for me, if you had to pick one all-around cartridge, for me, that would be it. I mean, for everything.
Yeah.
Everything.
It almost can, maybe minus a grizzly bear.
Yeah, I mean, there's some stuff. And Preston and I are in this camp, and people joke about the 6.5 Creedmoor being the Needmore because it's it's a little bit modest in velocity. Well, if you extend the barrel length on a Creedmoor by say 4 inches, you pick up about 100 foot per second. So now you've got a pretty high performing cartridge on your hand that would perform on antelope and deer out at some extended range. Or what you can do, instead of a 28-inch barreled 6.5 Creedmoor, you could do a 20-inch 6.5 PRC, get the same velocity, and you got room to put a suppressor on there, and you're way more ergonomic. And it's just, it really allows you to have that extended range performance and flat trajectory, but super ergonomics. It's short, easy to handle.
On one of mine, I went down to 18.
18. I ain't scared.
I was getting over 2,700 feet per second out of factory.
Yep.
Fantastic.
Yep, fantastic. And again,
I've not had the Needmore with the Creedmoor. I don't know.
I've not
experienced it. I hear this all the time, like, 6.5 Needmore, and I'm like, wait a second. I have hunted for years with a Creedmoor, and I have never shot a big game animal where we're like, that's not enough. I shot a bull elk at 600 yards with a Creedmoor, no problem, full pass through, bullet exited, caught in the off shoulder. Like, I mean, he just thumped straight down. Like, I mean, you high shoulder shoot something with a 6.5 Creedmoor, and it's going down. Like, that's just, it's shot placement. And I don't know, when somebody says it's a need more, I'd be like, well, maybe you need more practice.
Yeah. Well,
I'm not saying that it's perfect. I'm just saying that
there's
a lot of times it's shot placement.
A lot of myths that goes along with that, and a lot of shade tree ballisticians, that, I have to have X amount of energy on target for it to do anything, or this, that, and the other. And so there's a lot of, shade tree ballisticians out there that, continue that disinformation, if you will. But it does certainly have its limitations.
For sure.
It's not magic. It's not a laser beam. It's got its limitations, just like anything else. But that 6.5 PRC is just past the click. I mean, it gives you just that last
little more horsepower.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So to change topics here, Christy, you are here in studio in Grand Island, Nebraska. So let's talk about what you're doing here on the 3-gun side first, and then the big topic is reloading, which is kind of where I wanted to go with this podcast. But first and foremost, you're here to shoot a match. So Zombies in the Heartland, right?
Yeah, I'm here to drink out of a fire hose. It's it's going to be really rough. So yeah, I'm here. I'm going to shoot the match. I'm going to shoot it, as a 2-gun. I'm going to shoot the Ruger PC carbine, and then I'm going to shoot shotgun.
Nice.
So it's going to be a lot of fun, and I'm kind of in the same dynamic I found myself years ago when I started shooting with Galen at Magpul with long range fundamentals, and this is a whole new game. Completely new equipment. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm here to learn and, just watch everybody who's proficient at shooting this sport do their thing and get as much information as I can so I can go home and figure out what gear I need to acquire. Because everything we do, every sport we change, it's a gear bomb, gear shakedown, gear acquisition. What I take hunting is different than what I take to a match for long range or precision shooting, and I think I'm going to find the same thing here. So I'm here for a good time.
Yeah.
Well, and that's what we like to do is put on a good time match.
I think, the Zombies in the Heartland, since its first one over a decade ago, has always been about bring what you got and run what you brung. It's it's just come out here, have a good time, and make it a family kind of event. And obviously it's got some circus stages with the zombie theme, so it'll be a great match to cut your teeth on. That's for sure. I'm not a big multi-gun fan or competitor. I did have to run this match last year though, and it was way more fun than I thought it would be. I'm doing the long range stuff, and that's kind of where my passion's been for most of my shooting life, and I kind of poo-pooed 3-gun for a while. Like, I don't care. I don't,
it's not as applicable to what you're doing in your off time.
Yeah, it doesn't relate to my hunting, that's for sure. And so I ran the match. I borrowed my boss's, shout out to Neil, borrowed all of his guns and all of his gear, and actually had a great time. And it was a blast. I could see why it's addicting too. And just like anything else, when you're shooting, the same fundamentals of accuracy always apply. Yeah. And as Jerry Michalik said, sight alignment, sight picture, trigger control, nothing's more important than trigger control. Breaking the sights when you have good, or breaking the trigger when you have good sight alignment and sight picture. So same fundamentals apply, and it was a blast. You're going to have a ton of fun. And just like anything else, you're going to have to go to the shop and find some new gear that holsters.
Everything's gear driven.
It is.
It really is. I just love going out there, and I used to do a little bit of 3-gun. Just love burning down a magazine.
Yeah.
Nothing feels better than that. Like, you don't need to shoot all of them. But you
want
as well.
to. Yeah. You want to, though.
When you work at an ammo factory, I guess.
Well, that does help a little bit. But nothing
there's
better
nothing that
than dropping that mag and grabbing that next one and slamming her in there.
Yeah.
Let's keep going.
Yep. I've got some video footage, I think, maybe on the YouTubes of you running a 3-gun match.
Yeah, don't worry about that. Don't look for it.
Awesome. Well,
everybody's going to be Googling this as soon as we're done.
So you're going to have a blast at the match. It's a ton of fun and a great match to cut your teeth in.
Yeah. Very much so.
You're here in the studio, though, because you're doing some reloading stuff with none other than marketeer Preston Lentfer. So what's going on the reloading side?
Well, I'm here to so I've always bought factory ammo. My dad reloads and has shown me some things over the years, but nothing super in depth. And I think as technology evolves, so does technique. And so that's been, I kind of wanted to take some time and learn some new technique with modern day reloading equipment. And I just felt like it was a really important time with so much with what I do with my series is not just the hunting and shooting sports episodes, but I also do the tips from the wild, which is like tips and tactics. And there's a lot of people that are curious about how to reload, what they need to get into reloading, and really want to start cutting their teeth on that because obviously the availability of ammunition has been limited, and so there's some advantages or potential advantages if you have that extra resource of being able to reload. So I wanted to bring that to the viewers of my channel, but also from an empowerment standpoint, there's taking a lot of ladies out there and say, hey, you know what, you can learn and do this too. Sometimes it's really hard to learn from a spouse or a parent. It's better to learn from like kind of that third party, which is what I did with my firearms training. And so I came here for help from you, and it's been great.
Yeah, we did you feel like it was kind of fire hosey as well?
No, I didn't think it was bad. I mean, I have been obviously I've seen my dad reload.
Sure.
I've been listening to a ton of podcasts, and a lot of the nomenclature that they're using is completely like a foreign language. I mean, they could have been speaking French and half this stuff. I'm like, I have no idea what they're talking about right now. But then after going through the last 2 days, a lot of it's making sense. I kind of have that aha moment of having the visual to go with what I was hearing. And it's equipment. There's so many things with everything we do that's personal preference. Whether you're running a hunting trip or you're going to a PRS or NRL Hunter match or you're reloading, a lot of the equipment you're going to buy is tailored to your personal preference. And I think reloading is the exact same thing. And so you're going to learn a lot of information out there online, and you kind of narrowed it down to the things that you really need, and you don't always have to have all the things that everybody says you should buy because it can get really expensive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And unnecessary in a lot of cases.
And that's why we do have kits. The kits are nice. Don't get me wrong. I started with a kit. I think we all did for the most part.
Probably did.
Both of us, Seth and I, hail from Tech. That's where we got our start at Hornady. So we both started with the classic kit. You soon grow to realize that the press is very useful, and the reloading block's useful, and the calipers are useful. But then maybe you want something else that's a little bit better. Maybe you don't want a powder measure anymore or hand trickle. You want an auto charge.
And that auto charge was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I'm not going to lie. Like, that was real impressive.
That's the easy button.
I remember watching my dad with, like, the tipping scales
the
when I was a
balance beam.
kid. And, I mean, he was like, it was so tedious. He'd drop a kernel in and another one and another one. It was like, oh, boy.
But there's so many things. Like, you have to figure out a little bit. Nowadays, the internet is just this wide, encompassing thing. You can kind of figure out what people like in general, and maybe you'll like. But you kind of got to start out and do it with what you have and figure out what you like, because so much of it is personal preference. You probably like a different press than I do, or whatever have you. But
or scale or whatever.
And I wish you could just say, look at our catalog and be like, this is what you need. But no, we have several of everything to fit at all kinds of budgets too. Budget is a huge concern as well.
Yeah.
Auto Charge Pro is nice, but not everybody's going to afford that or want to afford that,
Yeah, it is. Everything can get costly. Some of the things that I found really helpful was the bench considerations. We were talking about the nuts and bolts of bench construction, them being robust enough to handle a press, but then also the size constraints. So for me, having a bench that would be too deep where I couldn't reach the equipment that I'm wanting to, if I was sitting, then I have to get out of the chair and reach across, or if the bench is too long, then if I chose to sit, then I would have to be walking back and forth a lot more. Like, I mean, how much do you want to be moving? Are you limited on mobility? Are you super tall, so you want a taller bench? Or are you super short like me and you want a little, shorter, narrower bench? So I think a lot of that's really personalized, and kind of looking at storage options on how to keep everything kind of at your fingertips that you need, but without things becoming so cluttered that you don't have a workspace. So managing that workflow was really helpful, and actually getting and doing it and seeing my workflow progress, that was really helpful.
Yeah, that's something often not talked about. I think you get started reloading is bench flow from one process to the next process, and where you position them and how you move them. And what press were you guys working with?
We use an iron press.
Iron press. So the iron press is a single-stage press. For the listeners not familiar with it, it's made out of iron, as the name would imply. Very heavy, incredibly robust, huge loading windows. You can load these really big cartridges. And our other single-stage press is called the classic press. And I remember taking phone calls on this, and I still get questions today. Somebody that's wanting to get into reloading, and they are looking at a progressive press. And I'm not here to tell you what to do, but I would highly advise, if you're not a reloader today and you want to be tomorrow, buy a single stage press.
And I mentioned that.
Of any flavor. And even if in the next few months you buy a progressive press, you will always have a use for a single stage press.
Yep.
You will always be like, I want to tinker with this different primer, and I don't need to set up a progressive press to load 200 rounds. I want to load 10. And so I think having a single stage press is important for everybody as a serious loader, because you'll find a way to use it. Small batches of stuff, or when you're really trying to, make your hunting ammo for the year. Well, you don't need 200 rounds likely, but maybe you want to make 40 or 50, and you can really slow down and be very methodical and intimate with each individual process, and the quality of your ammunition will reflect that, and I think that's important.
Yeah, and oftentimes I'll use a single stage while I'm loading progressively, because I'll screw up and I'll forget to do a stage, or I missed a primer or something, and I'll just walk over to the single stage and finish that particular case and throw it back into the progressive.
Mm-hmm.
I've done that before.
Yeah.
But like you say, for hunting ammo, that's what we were doing today.
Mm-hmm.
So we loaded up some 6.5 PRC,
Yeah,
143 ELDX. Yep, using her once fired brass.
Nice.
So we bumped the shoulder back 2 thousandths, inserted a large rifle primer, and used Reloader 26. So
good
you
stuff.
should have the best accurate ammunition fit for your gun possible. So
Yeah, so I'm going to go home. I'm going to swap out rifle scopes because I got a 4-32 NX8 on there, and I want to put a 7-35 ATAC-R on there just
Jeez.
because this thing is going to be my Cadillac, okay?
Yeah, right.
So, and I just got a Banish 30 suppressor, so I'm going to roll those things on
Perfect.
there. And I'm going to start out zeroing it with factory ammo. And then what I'm going to do is throw in our hand loads, get my new chronograph. I'm really curious to compare my muzzle velocity difference, like where I'm at by adding that suppressor on there, and then also the ammunition that we reloaded.
Right.
Like, is the velocity difference going to be significant? Because that Banish, it's either a 7 or 9 inch suppressor. You can take the baffles out and kind of adjust how long you want it. And I'm going to check the balance point on the rifle, and I'm going to kind of try to match that to where I want to keep the length of the suppressor. And
Sure.
that's, for me, having a well-balanced rifle is really important. I really don't care if it's long.
Yeah.
Some people are really concerned about weight and size, and I'm not too concerned about it. I want my rifle to balance well. So I shoot a lot of standing tripod in the field.
Oh, sure.
And so having a good balance point. So I'm gonna flirt with that a little bit, and then and I'll walk it out. On my range now, I've got steel out to 1400. So I'm gonna walk it out and see
Yeah.
where. Yeah. So get everything trued up, and maybe I'll get to bear hunt with it this spring. I have a tag, so we'll see what happens. But if not, then it'll be going antelope hunting with me in August.
And and the great thing is, I wrote down the load on the box. We have the load on the
Yeah.
box, so if you run out,
Hopefully
you can find some
yeah.
Reloader 26 or to match that exact
Yeah,
load.
because
but-
I have 4350 right now. I only have powder to burn
Yeah.
for 6.5 Creed. So
which is the magic powder for it, in my opinion.
yeah.
For the PRC?
No, for
And
the
Creedmoor.
Creedmoor.
Oh, Creedmoor. Yeah, if it doesn't run on 4350, there's a problem with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
100%. So you mentioned you are, we support you. You can use factory ammunition.
Yeah.
So what was the drive to get into reloading? It's something that you don't have to do.
No.
But why do you want to?
I want to understand my firearm, the cartridge, and capabilities better. For me, I don't know enough about guns. I should always keep learning, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's never a diminishing return on education. It's always an increase in return on investment, and the satisfaction of being able to do it and understand it. Because for me, it's been very overwhelming. And it's kind of like the good old boys sport still. Like, there's not a lot of girls out there that are like, I'm reloading ammo this weekend. And there's a few, especially in the competitive world, there are some ladies that are really very good at it. And I've got some friends that are fantastic and are very precise with their reloading technique. And it's just something that's been like a foreign language. And I figure I better step up and start learning. And it's just good to learn. The more you learn, the better you are all the way around.
100%. I remember, growing up and then getting a job here and reloading a lot, that at first it was you were reloading to make better performance for your rifle. And I feel like in the last few years, certainly within the last 5 years, let's say, right when we released the Precision Hunter line of ammunition, and we kind of rebranded our ELD match, our match line of ammo, I reload basically to duplicate the factory. That's really been kind of an interesting trend to see shift. There are some instances where you have cartridges that aren't maybe as thoughtfully designed, that have some poor design attributes that you can mitigate by hand loading for. You can increase the consistency or the accuracy by a well thought out hand load. But for cartridges that have a really well designed chamber that just lend themselves to good accuracy across the board, I'm reloading almost just to scratch the itch of like, I know I reloaded this, so it's got to be good, versus the same performance. This just came from the factory box.
Well, and also 50% of your cost in reloading is brass. So if you have the opportunity to take your factory once fired ammo or how, and reload it, I mean, you do have a cost savings once you get over the initial investment. And it just, lends itself to you being able to stockpile that stuff even more.
Yeah. Well,
quote unquote, right?
The best saying is you'll never save money reloading, but you'll shoot more for the same money.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's key. I love to shoot.
It is so fun.
Yeah.
It is so addicting. Like I talk to people and they're like, oh, well, hunting is just so awesome. And I'm like, hunting is awesome. And I get so excited when I'm hunting. But when I walk up to a stage at a match, my body is like vibrating.
Yeah.
It is such an
Those
adrenaline
nerves.
rush.
And
It is
there's
so fun.
The internal pressure of
Yes.
wanting to perform up to your standards, and then the unknown. And that is a unique feeling that you get that same feeling when you have been glassing up this valley for 3 hours and then you finally see an antler, in the weeds or something, and it's like everything's electric.
Yeah.
You can kind of duplicate that feeling a little bit by doing some of these matches.
And the NRL Hunter does a great job at that. Just with, you have to hunt your targets, and it makes it a very exhilarating sport. It's truly dynamic, and it's, I get jacked up. And it's weird because I didn't shoot a lot as a kid, and my dad's like, oh, how'd you get so into guns and hunting and stuff? But I'm into it, and I really struggle with, there's a lot of firearms in optic packages you can now buy that you dial to 400 or you dial to whatever the range is. And it's, all that data is set on such a limited or specific set of variables. And I really love the freedom that learning has given me, if nothing more than I can take any bullet and put it with my rifle, and I can switch out bullet weights and I can switch out ammo, and I know in a matter of minutes I can get my data and I can configure that, and I can be on target in a very short period of time. And that's really empowering. I don't have to go cut a new turret and send in to have some guy that knows ballistics better than me figure it out for me. And it's really nice to just be able to say, well, I went to the store and I got a 300 Win Mag on my hunt, and they're out of 200 grains, but they got 180s. So I'm just going to run this across my magneto speed and just get data in 15 minutes, and it doesn't matter. I'll buy what the store has.
Whether you're in California or Colorado.
Yeah, that's right.
The variables are going to change, and you're going to account for them.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Yeah. And that's the great thing, like, ballistic software has done for everyone, and you guys are doing with Fordoff incredible things where, Doppler radar is really tracking the full bullet path and making it to where we can really understand what's happening in flight. And not that I understand it to the level that you guys understand it. I understand it enough to where I can do my basic data and feel comfortable stepping into the field. And like if I have a deer at distance or an elk at distance, I'm very comfortable with my data where I can dial, and given the wind conditions are solid, I have point of aim, point of impact accuracy, and there's a lot to be said for that.
Yeah, the confidence, I think, is also worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
Is that, when you lay down on the gun and you can control your breathing and you can control your emotion, and surgically you're going to put that bullet exactly where you want it to go, that confidence is paramount. And I think it's huge with technology advancing the way it is, and you've got like smart scopes, and you've got stuff, Bluetoothing a dot inside your scope for where you to hold. That's cool. I just think there is a lot of value in knowing how it actually works.
Yeah.
If you want to use those, great, but you should also know how it actually works.
Why that dot is where it is.
Yeah.
I'm so overwhelmed learning new technology. Like, I hate it. I am like, okay, I have a system. This really works good for me, and I'm going to stick with it. And like, a lot of this electronic stuff to me is very overwhelming. And
Sure.
And I want to make sure that I've trued that information, and like that this is absolutely what it says. When I pick up a rifle, the first thing I do before I go hunting is I zero it and I take it straight to. I try to get 800 yards or little bit farther if possible, and true it. And then I go hunting because I can hunt with confidence, everything else in. And when I put guns away, I do the same thing. And some of those binoculars or whatever, a lot of that stuff is like, okay, if I'm setting it up, that's great. Then I'm going to trust it. But if somebody hands me something, I have a real problem with that. I'm like, I just can't do that.
Yeah, especially when there's a live animal at the other end of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if there's a live animal at the other end of it, you better know why your bullet's going where it's going.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that there's a lot of good that comes from it. And it's not hard to learn. It just takes a little time. And
the resources are there.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we've always tried to do at Hornady is support Ford off, obviously, but all of our reloading tools, for example, on the YouTube side of stuff, on the social media side of stuff, where the information's out there. And then to compound that, if you have a question about Ford off, about our reloading tools, or anything Hornady, or in some cases, I remember taking a lot of calls about stuff just gun and shooting related.
Right.
Call us up, 800-338-3220, extension 3. That'll take you to tech. There's a team of guys up there. All of them hunt, shoot, reload, and they'll be happy to walk you through stuff.
I remember getting calls on Friday because other companies were closed.
Yeah.
They didn't have our product, but they went ahead and called us anyway.
Well, I have on my YouTube channel, Pursue the Wild, Katie Godfrey came out to my range, and we set up a Kestrel is nuts and bolts with Ford off. So it is a 12-minute long video, but it will walk you through exactly every step fundamentally that you need to do to get that working with whatever firearm you're shooting, whatever cartridge you're shooting. When it gives you step-by-step instructions, obviously you have to follow the instructions for the data to be good. What you put in is what you get out.
Yep.
If you put bad data in, your impacts are going to show it downrange. And obviously there is some adjustment with that with your axial form factor on the backside, but good data in, good data out, and that's what matters.
Yep, 100%.
I've always said that.
You've always said that's what I've always said.
You have to have good data to get good data back.
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes without saying. Yeah, and then it becomes increasingly more easy to see when Ford off is telling you exactly. We've called it the ballistic lie detector, because Ford off is correct, and if it's not correct, you did something wrong, whether that be muzzle velocity or zero angle, or your atmospherics are off, or your shooting angles off, or whatever. Using the power of the Doppler-derived drag curves it's kind of cool to look back on it.
Kind of remarkable to think about.
It really is remarkable to think about.
When I was a kid.
Zoom out. This is amazing.
Yeah, I looked at the box still.
Yeah.
Like, if I zero this at 200, I'll only have to hold 7 inches high at 300.
And there's a lot of people still out there doing that.
There's a lot of people still doing that, yeah.
But our app is totally free, so people are welcome to use it.
Yeah, no excuse not to. And not only is it free, it just happens to be the best one out there.
Right.
And obviously we've got a dog in the race, and of course we're going to say that. But the reality is that other BC-driven ballistic solvers, they're not even in the same universe. And that's something to hang your hat on. That's not that we often give ourselves pats on the back or whatever, but this is a remarkable program. And I know we kind of tangentially took off on Ford off, but anything before we wrap up? Any rapid fire Q&A?
Well, keep us in the loop on how that ammo shoots.
Yeah.
I'm sure it's going to shoot great.
Yeah.
After you get that new scope on it, and then hopefully this fall is full of beautiful harvest with it.
Yeah, I'm gonna draw some good tags because as just moving to Wyoming, we're cashing out our Oregon points, and so hopefully doing some antelope and deer in Oregon, maybe some archery elk, and then we'll pop over to Wyoming and hit. I had 4 years worth of non-resident points for Wyoming, so my good luck would have it I was just in the race to qualify for drawing non-resident tags. So I've got kind of the best of both worlds between Oregon and Wyoming this year. So I'm gonna have some good public land hunts, and we'll hunt. I drew elk. I don't know for sure on deer yet, but fingers crossed. So it's going to be a fun season. I'm really looking forward to getting out in the woods and, doing some hunting.
Awesome.
With hand-loaded 143 LDXs.
It's going to be a great fall from the sounds of it. Plenty of tags lined up, some high-quality hand-loaded ammunition that you can, rest assured that you put that amount of powder in there, you seeded that bullet, and that's awesome.
Well,
So-
we're going to have another phase to this too, because I've got
Okay.
a bench at home I've got to set up. So now I'm going to take some of the information I learned over the last few days and go home, and I'm going to build my own bench and probably document that as well, and kind of show people like, hey, this is what I learned and this is how I'm going to manage my workflow, and kind of have another segue into that. And then the specifications of why I chose things. And so that'll be kind of the next 5th part.
Yeah, kind
part
of
5.
all-encompassing.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, not to go and rewind, but the whole workflow idea segment, I was like, I'm not so sure about this. I'm so glad we did it.
Yeah.
Please look out for that, guys. There's a lot of interesting things to think about that I never thought about before we started.
Yeah, which leads us into a good thing that we need to talk about, which is if they want more of this information or they want more of your content, where do they find that? Where do our listeners go?
Well, I encourage everybody to watch Carbon TV for uncensored hunting and shooting sports content. So my podcast airs there. My digital series, Pursue the Wild, I've got 5 seasons airing there. I'm filming season 6 this year. My tips and tactics, I call them Tips from the Wild. Those are housed on YouTube and Facebook. I'm hoping to get those over on Carbon at some point. But right now, that's where you can find that content. Or you can just go to my website, which is pursuethewild.com, and I've got everything under my video library there.
Awesome. Well, Christy, can't thank you enough for taking the time to obviously come here and see our facilities and reload with Preston, but to sit
Yeah.
down and chat with us, it's
Yeah.
much appreciated. Preston, as always, a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
The pleasure is mine.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for tuning in on this episode of the Hornady Podcast. We will catch you on the next one.